James Mennie brought to you by Gilbert & Daughter. Last chance for all winter items. Everything is $20, no exceptions. Gilbert & Daughter, 49 Donegani in Point Claire.
What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. So, Jim, we haven't talked a lot about it on the show yet today, but there is a byline. It's kind of hard. It gets overlooked, of course, because so much else is going on. There's a by-election in Terrebonne. I think when we first talked about this, after Pierre Fitzgibbon decided to call it a day, we thought this would be a cakewalk for the PQ. That's still the case, do you think?
I don't think so. I don't think there are lead pipes cinching. I got to tell you, and I was just discussing this with our mutual producer, Dean, it's going to be crazy. We've got news coming at us left, right, and center. Thank God for this show to sort it all out. But the fact is, there are no small stories anymore, and this by-election could prove to be yet another bombshell simply because the actual fundamental, political DNA of Quebec, of Canada, is changing on an almost daily basis. And guess what? Whereas the PQ, when this, by-election was called, or up in the weeks leading up to the call of the by-election, the PQ was perceived as, my God, thank goodness for Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon. He's so much better than that terrible François Legault, who doesn't seem to be doing anything right. What a nice guy that. Well, then all of a sudden things change. Here's Donald Trump with his stupid tariffs. We need someone who's going to go to bat. Guess what? They have bank accounts and stock accounts up in Terrebonne too, and they're looking at that. And I don't think they're too. How can I put it? I don't think they're as enthusiastic, perhaps, about having a Parti Québécois MNA, as good as that candidate may be, Aaron. They may not be interested in hitching their wagon to the Parti Québécois at a moment when you really need to be up to your teeth in Canada. Let's face it, Monsieur Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon has been a bit on the defensive when it comes to dealing with the entire tariff situation. He wasn't exactly coming out swinging against the Americans when all this began, and I think to a certain extent he's paid a price for that. And lest we forget, every separatist party in this country, whether it's the Parti Québécois or the Bloc Québécois, has got one political arm tied behind its back, because right now, as I said earlier on the show, there is nothing more politically useless than a Quebec separatist in the present situation. Yeah. So do the people of do the good burghers of Terrebonne feel the same way? We'll find out tonight. But don't be surprised if you get surprised tonight, and don't be surprised even if they don't win, that you see the Liberal candidate doing way better than anybody thought they would.
All right. So, at the end of all this, it doesn't really matter. If this goes, we're still 2 years away from a year away from a provincial election. Do we take this as a sign, though, tonight, Jim? I know we often talk about that in an election like we did during the federal election, the by-election, of course, in Amard-LaSalle, right? That the Liberals did as poorly as they did. Will this signify something if the CAQ either wins or loses this?
Absolutely. This is things are being flipped on their head. Did you see the Angus Reid poll that came out this afternoon for the federal standing?
No, are we in a dead heat still, or what's happening?
No. The Liberals at 40 and the Tories, I think, were at 32.
Oh.
It's completely flipped, buddy. And if an election were held today, they'd have a majority. And Carney isn't officially the PM. Now, he may not be the PM. We have to wait for events to play out. But that's why I say take nothing for granted. Do not even look at yesterday's events as being jurisprudence for anything, because right now I think people are suddenly having conversations in their homes that they never thought they'd have to have. People are looking at whether indeed it's planning your vacation, or whether it's indeed looking at your finances, your evaporator be shaken, or the future of your business being called into compromise because of the nutcake they have down in the White House. But this is for real stuff. This is not a matter of thumping your chest, and quoting les chansonnières of the 60s and the 70s and talking about the Quebec nation, because right now I would challenge any Quebec politician, no matter how vociferously nationalistic / separatist they are, to go up to any politician in the States or indeed Canada and say, en français, s'il vous plaît. Because quite frankly, that is not a priority right now, and I think most Quebecers understand that. So that's why I wonder, how well will the PECs do tonight? Yeah. Only time will tell, Aaron, but honestly, take nothing for granted. I know that seems like a a wussy way out. But the fact is, you run a terrible, terrible risk if you think anything is going to be holding fast in a day and age where quite literally you and I find ourselves finding 8 new angles to a topic we had discussed just 24 hours before.
I wonder, I'll get off this, but I do wonder, Paul St. Pierre Plamondon enjoying the popularity he did, of course, and it looked like it would be, as I said, a cakewalk. Yes, everything has changed. I'm trying to put myself in his shoes right now. What do you find to talk about? Because you can't sell separation.
Exactly.
No one wants to hear it right now. So where's your play?
Exactly. And anybody who wants to go after you will say, okay, what you just said about A, B, and C is very good. But the bottom line is, have you reneged on your pledge to hold a sovereignty referendum in your first term if you form the government? Because I think most people, and this is me talking now, I think most people in most ridings, no matter of their political allegiance, would say not a very good idea in 2024, 25 to be going into a sovereignty referendum with the world being in the state that it's in at the moment. And we're even seeing that now at the federal level. I mean, to a certain extent, the bloc is dialed down. And, the one daring thing I will say, Aaron, is I would imagine, I mean, they'll look at it as a huge opportunity, but certainly for Yves Blanchet of the bloc, and to a certain extent, Pierre Poilievre, if there is a French language debate, they better choose their topics very, very carefully, because you don't have to speak that well to tear into somebody who's talking about perhaps forming their own country, or someone who's willing to stand by and say, well, that's none of the federal government's business in the era that we're in right now. I think we're seeing a real fundamental change in the way the political wind is blowing. And I think people are beginning to adapt to it. And I think even if we're not really surprised, I don't think the expectations that a lot of people had about tonight's by-election will be realized. I think you and I will still be talking about some surprises tomorrow.
All right, let me move on to talk about Mark Carney. We know he did a quick fly through Europe, met France. He's in England right now. He's off to Calumet, I think, tomorrow. This idea of not meeting with Donald Trump, I know we talked about this last week, and I think a lot of that has died down now, right? Because he's trying to get things done in Europe. Of course, it didn't die down if you're a conservative. That's how Pierre Poilievre going after him again today for that. Is he kind of treating Trump the way you thought he would? And do you think this is the right way?
I think he's playing this brilliantly. And what I find interesting, and I beg our listeners' pardon in advance if I'm wrong, has Trump said a single word about this guy?
Haven't heard it.
Since he took office, he's been mouthing off about everything else under the sun. I haven't heard any even oblique reference to Mark Carney. But here's Mark Carney going, you know what? We have to go see loyal allies. So he goes to France and then visits the king over in Blighty. But what I really love is he says, well, the G7 in June in Alberta, we'd love to have Vladimir Zelenskyy come and visit us. Yeah. Which, as far as I'm concerned, what a great drag of Trump, because and we'll be talking about this between now and then, there are a lot of people in this country who think Trump simply should not come to the G7 because why? Not because he's a jerk or he wants to make us the 51st cent. He's a convicted felon. He shouldn't be allowed into the country. So turning around and then saying, oh, by the way, if you do want to come there, Mr. President, we may have that guy that you yelled at and then caught all kinds of hell for yelling at the G7. So he may be overshadowing you as well. So I thought it's a great way to troll Donald Trump. He seems to have a devious sense of fun, this Mark Carney, and I think you challenge that sense of fun at your own risk. And I'm not just talking about Trump. I'm talking about anybody who's going to go up against them between now and the election.
Shots fired. Okay. Let me ask you with respect to, and I'm going to bring this up now. This was our question we started with today. We now know who will be going up to replace Valérie Plante. It's Luc Dubois. Yeah. Mayor of the Plateau, but that's a whole other issue. I want to talk about the idea, now that he is there, now that we actually have two parties, we know we have two candidates, right?
Yep.
One is for this road across the mountain. The other has come out and said they are against it. Is this an election issue in your mind?
Absolutely. But that said, I would also warn our listeners, and I've covered a lot of elections in this town, and I've seen a lot the Montreal electorate, as far as I'm concerned, make the same mistake. Please vote for somebody this time. There's a lot at stake here. Don't vote for somebody just because you hate the other person. Don't vote for Ensemble Montréal or another party simply because you think Projet Montréal has done a terrible job. find out what you're getting into, because you know what? Montreal is no longer in a probationary situation anymore. We screw up again, I think that's going to be it. This city, as I said, this city, I'm not sure could survive another 4 years of Projet Montréal. But that said, if someone turns around, a la Trump, and says, vote for me, I'm not the other guy, I think that'd be a huge mistake. So by all means, yes, Camillien Hood is going to be an election issue. Parking will be an election issue. Bicycle paths will be an election issue. But guess what? So is housing. So is taxation. So is where the hell this city, this once beautiful, prosperous, romantic, sexy city is going to be in the next 5 years. Because I tell you, I used to be able to predict these things, and I could not, for the life of me, tell you where Montreal is going to be 5 years from now.
All right. And we'll leave it at that, Jim. Thank you.
Adama.